And I want to welcome you, colleagues. My name is Brian Morales. Welcome to the second meeting of the sub-working groups of the Global Coalition on Synthetic Drugs. This is sub-working group 1.2 for the East region. Beginning this month of November through February, we will be looking at specific initiatives available to us through international organization partners. We will also explore new activities or policies that we can initiate together. In January and February, we will have the full menu of activities available for review, and we will invite you to express your interest to the international organizations managing the respective initiatives. A few other administrative announcements. Please update your screen name so it lists your name, organization, and country. And also thank you for your feedback regarding the number of calendar invites that we've been sending. We recognize we've been sending many calendar invites to participants. So for future meetings, we're going to send one calendar invite for the entire block of 4-hour meetings for sub-working group 1.1 through 2.2, and 3-hour block of meetings for 3.1 to 3.3. We will still send invites for both East and West meeting times. We're also seeking to increase coalition participation to include stakeholders from all target audiences of synthetic drug issues. For example, chemists and policymakers and justice system representatives. So please continue to share the coalition registration links with your colleagues so we can make sure that all stakeholders have a seat at the table. Now, I also want to inform that the website for the coalition has launched. You can find it at globalcoalition.us, and I'm going to ask Sarah to post the link in the chat. And also, I am going to now share the agenda for today. We have with us our co-chairs who will give opening remarks. We have Anthony Conway, Detective Superintendent of Crime Strategies, Crime Command, Australian Federal Police. And we have Mason Smith, Permanent Secretary from the Ministry of Home Affairs and Immigration of Fiji. Following their introductory remarks, we will have the presentation from UNODC on expanding the program for safe handling and early detection of substances. And then we will have Froilan Blanco from WCO, World Customs Organization, speak about the abuse of general aviation for trafficking of synthetic drugs. So with that, let me turn it over to Anthony Conway and Mason Smith for their introductions and the chairing of the meeting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Have you got me?
We can hear you.
Thanks for the introduction. My name's Anthony Conway, and I'm a Detective Superintendent with the Australian Federal Police. I've spent the majority of my policing career in investigations involving drug crime and transnational serious and organised crime. Most recently, I've taken up the role of leading the AFP's drug strategy and combating outlaw motorcycle gang strategy. Outlaw motorcycle gangs and their sophisticated criminal networks are the greatest threat impacting Australia. This threat is driven by offshore members working with international groups to arrange large-scale drug importations into Australia. Those include synthetic drugs and precursors. The threat of synthetic drugs is most definitely a global issue and, in my view, requires a global solution. Many of our nations are currently facing an epidemic of either opioid or methamphetamine misuse or overdose deaths. Look, I acknowledge Brian and his team from the US State Department for this great initiative and look forward to working with you all in the coming months to come up with some practical and tangible solutions in combating the issue of trafficking of synthetic drugs and precursors. Sub-working group 1.2 is dedicated to trafficking of synthetic drugs and precursors, and the theme of today's meeting is border security. Brian's already outlined the two presentations today, which are pre-recorded. After these presentations, I'm very keen for participants to speak up and give some contemporary insights into border security challenges that they face with regard to the trafficking of synthetic opioids and precursor chemicals. That's it from me. Over to you, Mason.
Thank you, Anthony. Colleagues, good afternoon, and Bula from sunny Fiji. I am not an expert in drugs by any mile of imagination. I have a technical team that's here with me that will provide any technical guidance that I may need. I'm basically the orchestrator for our national narcotics strategy. But let me just say that we've noticed a transition in Fiji. Previously, we were worried about drugs simply transiting through our country. Now we are developing into a market for drugs in and of itself. So it's a major worry. We're always playing catch up. These drug pushers, manufacturers are always one step ahead of us, and it's always a struggle to try and catch up with them. What I'd just like to mention is we look forward to some constructive outcomes for these meetings. And I've just been listening into the first sub-working group. And as we discussed with Craig yesterday, perhaps the Pacific should organize a meeting sometimes in March next year, perhaps with colleagues from the Colombo plan, to see how we can partner and ensure that some of the resources, some of the sharing of data, some capacity building can take place apart from the monthly meetings that we're having. So I look forward to today's meeting. And as Anthony said, we encourage constructive participation at the question and answer session. Thank you. Naka.
So I'd like to talk to you a little bit today, as Andrew mentioned, about the tools and resources that we have within laboratory and scientific service of UNODC to assist member states in understanding and responding to manufacturing of synthetic drugs. I'll talk a little bit about different products and manuals and guidelines that we have that are all connected to different types of training courses that we can carry out within the laboratory for assisting frontline officers, customs, border personnel and forensic personnel in the identification of synthetic drugs. If we want to think about why this is a big issue for UNODC in the last number of years, it's because there has been an increase in the number of substances that have been placed under international control. So if you look at this slide, you can see that within the last 8 years, almost 80 substances have been included in the 1961 and 1971 conventions. And in addition, 10 precursor chemicals, so 5 precursor chemicals for fentanyl and analogs, and 5 precursor chemicals for amphetamine type stimulants have been placed under international control. So regard to the work of UNODC, we have to respond to the emergence of substances, their prioritization for scheduling, and also assist member states to be able to implement scheduling decisions. And one of the important parts of this is understanding how synthetic drugs are manufactured. So I'll start off showing you some of the resources that we have. And the first of these is a very comprehensive manual we have on the clandestine manufacture of substances under international control. So this document is over 400 pages and it has 2 addenda. And this contains...
And my apologies. I'm sorry for interrupting. Interpreters are asking you to slow down, please, if you don't mind. Thank you so much.
Sure. Apologies. Yeah. So this resource is quite comprehensive and provides a lot of information on different elements that is necessary to understand when it comes to synthetic drug manufacture. Firstly, there are monographs of the substances most commonly manufactured in clandestine laboratories. And this consists of a lot of information about the substance, its control status, and the precursor chemicals that can be used for its manufacture. In addition, there are several sets of cross-referenceable tables which can be searched to provide more information about if a substance has been identified, what precursor chemicals can be used for its manufacture. And we find this very useful for those investigating clandestine laboratories. So if they find a chemical or a reagent that has been identified in a laboratory, this gives some indication of what drugs that it can be used to manufacture, and assists in the response and how the investigation should then be carried out. As I said, because of the increasing number of scheduling decisions in the last 8 years, we have produced 2 addenda for this document, and we're also incorporating all of the aspects of this resource, which is currently law enforcement sensitive document, into the UNODC early warning advisory. So this will enable law enforcement officers on location to be able to search for these resources and linked tools that will assist them in the work that they do. Related to the area of manufacture of synthetic drugs, we have a number of manuals and guidelines related to the safe handling and disposal of chemicals. So we have 3 manuals in this series, and we are also producing another manual on the dismantling of clandestine laboratories. So for each of these, for which we have training courses, we will also be developing further training courses to be provided in the laboratory here in Vienna or also in the field. And I'll talk about some of these in one of the other working groups as well. Another resource that we have available, which is something that UNODC does after scheduling decisions, is to update the multilingual dictionaries of substances under international control and precursor chemicals used for their manufacture. So each year there is, in the last 8 years, an addendum has been produced regarding each of the 78 substances, containing information on each of the 78 substances and 10 precursors that have been scheduled. So this is available in all 6 official UN languages and assists member states with fulfilling their obligations in implementing international scheduling decisions. I'll just mention 2 final resources that we have. The first of these is a project that we have started a number of years ago in just last year actually, in Latin America, and we're also doing it in Southeast Asia. And this is to assist member states in the development of national interagency disposal plans. So to help bring the different stakeholders together nationally and provide them with solutions, training and advice for the handling and disposal of drugs and precursor chemicals used in their manufacture. One final resource I'll mention in this presentation is the UNODC Early Warning Advisory. This contains a wealth of information regarding synthetic drugs, new psychoactive substances. We're monitoring over 1,200 substances at the moment. Law enforcement, forensic personnel, policymakers can each have access to different aspects of the system to search for resources that would assist them in understanding more about synthetic drugs. In particular, I'd mention national legislative responses. So law enforcement and forensic personnel need to be more involved in the development of national legislation. And this information contained within this aspect of the Early Warning Advisory can assist in responding to emerging synthetic drug threats and assist in developing appropriate responses at the national level. There are a lot of dashboards and analytical tools within the system that I would invite all participants to make full use of. And with that, let me thank you for your attention, and hopefully I didn't speak too fast. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask our co-chair, shall we go to the next presentation, or would you like to open it up for discussion on the safe handling presentation that we just saw?
Tony, I suggest we go to discussions whilst the presentation is still fresh on our mind. If that's okay with you, Tony?
I agree, Mason. Look, an excellent presentation on what documentary resources are available on the UNODC website, and I certainly agree with the presenter that it's critical for law enforcement to be leaning forward with regard to legislative reform in this space. But look, I'll open it up to participants.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. My name is Froilan Blanco, and I'm a technical expert, regional coordinator with the World Customs Organization in the Synthetic Drugs Detection Project, SDDP. Specifically in component 1. This component is related to face the problems with general aviation, or the abuse of general aviation by organized criminal groups for trafficking synthetic drugs. And I'm going to explain you shortly some things about this. Well, I used to say that transnational criminal groups are like any other international legal business. They are always trying to find new products, more luxury products, more expensive products, more demanded products, and they are also looking for new markets where to sell these new products. At the same time, they are looking or trying to find improvements in logistics, faster and safer means of transport, to be sure that they are able to deliver their merchandises on time and in perfect conditions. And everything, all of this, with the aim of getting highest profits. As I said, like any other legal business. And this is what is happening nowadays. The current trend is synthetic drugs, specifically some dangerous drugs like fentanyl. The new markets are everywhere, but there is a clear trend in United States of America, in North America, because they are demanding a lot of this type of drugs. But there is always a place for the internal consumption, the internal markets in all countries. Logistics, criminal groups are more and more using general aviation for transporting this illicit merchandise. And as a consequence, they are improving their results, their profits. Well, why they are using general aviation? Well, because of its specific characteristics. First of all, it's a flexible and fast mode of transportation. That means that it's quite easy for anyone to prepare a flight. In some minutes, you can get you can prepare your own flight plan, and you can get the approval in 15 minutes, 30 minutes, maximum 1 hour, and you can move people, merchandise, cargo, whatever, in a very short period of time. It's also difficult to monitor because, among any other things, that because there is a huge number of airports, airfields, and small airstrips spread all over the territory, all over the country, in several locations, very, very close to the border areas. And that means that it's not easy for the law enforcement agencies to establish a perfect control. They don't have enough resources to be deployed in all the different airports. General aviation is not only working in big airports like commercial aviation, for example. It's needed several resources for controlling perfectly all the different facilities that they are using. And because of that, this is very susceptible to criminal infiltration. These powerful groups, criminal groups, are able to corrupt pilots, crews, handling personnel. Even they are able to provide with a specific training, with the training for piloting to their members. So, and finally, talking about the illicit use of general aviation. The trafficking of illicit drugs is the most common criminal use for this means of transport, according to Europol statistics. This conveyance has some vulnerabilities, important vulnerabilities, like a lack of awareness among the law enforcement agencies in charge of controlling this activity, among the governments, because they are not aware about the infiltration of organized crime in these activities. They are not aware about the lack of resources, about the ways in which the criminals are using this, or in the ways in which they are trafficking with illicit merchandise using this means of transport, and so on. And if you are not aware, you cannot put in place the specific resources for combating this situation. And that's why there is a lack of effective controls, lack of knowledge, lack of expertise, lack of specific groups dedicated to control general aviation. So as a result, the controls are more weak. There is a lack of information about the situation in general, the activities of general aviation in general, how many aerodromes, facilities, crews, and so on, and a lack of intelligence about the criminal use of this means of transport, trends, modus operandi, and so on. And something important, there is an intermodality of means of transport. This refers to the use by criminals of different means of transport for carrying the drugs or the illicit merchandise. They are combining small aircrafts with fast boats, with cars, trucks, buses, and so on. Well, and this is what we can see in the reality. Here you can see some news in the newspapers regarding different operations, in this case from the Mexican army, in which they have seized not only cocaine but also heroin, methamphetamine, fentanyl, pills of fentanyl, and in the second case even huge amounts of cash. So the cocaine is not the queen anymore, and criminals are trafficking with some other illicit merchandises. This other news is related to what I was talking about, the intermodality of different means of transport for trafficking, in this occasion the drugs, the synthetic drugs, specifically the synthetic drugs from Mexico to USA. And finally, to conclude, I have to say that World Customs Organization has a great experience in improving the control of this means of transport, thanks to the Colibri project that was launched in 2019, and it is currently in its second phase, and it's been implemented in 9 countries in South America and the Caribbean, and 10 countries in Western and Central Africa, and with a great success. That's all. That's a general overview about the situation with general aviation and the abuse by criminals of this means of transport. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm at your disposal for any questions you have.